Okay, thank you. Are we back? Yes. So, I once more want to thank BGP for helping us to organize this, to have these amazing international scientists local, and please, hello, yes, so to have these amazing international scientists local, and actually I was just now asking people to come here because the opportunity you have if you live in Suriname is that you can actually interact with all these amazing researchers, and that's what they were doing in the back of the room. That's why I had to shout, come here, come here. So if you are in Suriname and you want to meet somebody as amazing as Truda or Natalie or Nina, please come. We're here at Lala Rook. Don't sit at your desk watching our YouTube live stream. That's why we didn't announce the live stream, because we want you here, we want you to interact with these people live. And once more, thank you BGP for bringing them. Dr. Natalie Castelblanco Martinez is a marine ecologist with over 15 years of experience in the conservation of marine mammals, seagrasses, and mangroves in Latin America. And she's based at Ecosur in Mexico. She's recognized for her research on the greater Caribbean manatee and her work combining science, policy, and community engagement. Natalie is also a strong advocate for including local and indigenous knowledge in conservation efforts across the region. And I have to mention something that is not mentioned here, is that Natalie has done some amazing work with a colleague in French Guiana, with Benoit de Toissy, and that's also that I'm very glad that she's here, because I hope she will come and work with us in Suriname. Dr. Natalie Castelblanco.
Thank you, Monique, for the presentation, and thank you, everyone, for being here. I want to spend these minutes to talk about one of my favorite animals, the manatees. I have been studying those animals for 25 years now, and but still we don't know a lot of things about them. They are very mysterious. I wonder who already saw a manatee here? In the river, in wildlife? Here one. Here in Suriname? Yeah. Alive? Good. 2, 3. Okay. Perfect. You are very privileged people, because it's not really easy to see those animals. I will start to tell you that manatees belong to the order Sirenia. The order Sirenia was called like this because the first conquerors saw those animals and they believed they were mermaids. I don't know why, but they saw those big animals with the tail, and they were imagining that those animals were singing to them, and they say, oh, okay, look at the famous mermaids, but they are not. But then we keep the name of Sirenia. We have two families of Sirenias, the dugongs and the manatees, which is the Trichechidae family. And the difference between the two families there are a lot of difference, but the main of them is the shape of the tail. You can see that the dugongs, they have the tail like a dolphin, right? While the Trichechidae, the manatees, they have the tail like a pail. No? And then we have several subspecies of the Trichechidae family. We have the African manatee, the Amazonian manatee, and the American manatee. So this is the distribution of the Sirenias in the world. You can see that the dugongs in violet or dark purple are very widely distributed in the Pacific, while we have the West African manatees, they are in green. And then we have our manatees in America. We have two species, the West Indian manatee in red, and then we have the Amazonian manatee, which is the only manatee that is exclusively from fresh water. And here we go even closer to the Trichechides, and then we have a division also in the American manatees, Trichechus manatus. We have two subspecies, the Florida manatee in blue, which are distributed in the Florida Peninsula in the United States and other states of the United States. And then we have the greater Caribbean manatees, which was known before as Antillean manatees in red. Which they have a very wide distribution from the Gulf of Mexico to Brazil. But they include also the islands of the Antilles, right? Cuba, Haiti, República Dominicana, and the Virgin Islands. And then we have also a big population of these manatees in the rivers of South America and in the Gulf of Mexico. I will talk a little more about the greater Antillean manatee. So you see that it's a big distribution, but also it's a very patchy distribution, okay? So this is one of the conservational problems for the subspecies, is that even though they have a wide range of distribution, they are like in islands. So we presume that a lot of them are not crossing between them, and then we have a problem of connectivity in many of these subpopulations. Manatees are also very different in the size. We have the Amazonian manatees, which is the smallest of the species. The maximum size of an Amazonian manatee is like a juvenile of a Florida manatee, just for you to have an idea. And then you have the greater Caribbean manatee, which is in between the two other species or groups. Manatees are very plastic in their capacity to adapt to different kind of environments. So we have this kind of animals in this kind of environments. We have manatees in the sea, like in Brazil. This is a coast of Brazil, in the northwest of Brazil. We have manatees in the sea, in this group of islands, for example, in Belize. Then we have manatees also in rivers, like the rivers we have here. This is the Orinoco River, where we have a big population of manatees too, and we have manatees in rivers like this too. So those animals are really capable to adapt to very different kind of environments, and that's why we have a lot of challenge to monitor them depending on the environment that they are. So in some areas like in Mexico or Belize, where are the areas that I work the most, you can do aerial surveys like this one. You can use drones and see manatees in this way. So beautiful. You can see them. You can take photos. You can do photo ID. You can do a lot of things, and it's super cool. But in areas like in South American rivers, we really have problems to do something like this. Benoit was very lucky to see an animal in this kind of tamed river, like dark river, like in French Guiana, this one. But normally they are in rivers with milky or muddy waters, which is very, very difficult to see them. Or you have this kind of waters with a lot of vegetation, and then you only have this little mussel getting out. Manatees can breathe between 5 to 6 minutes every time, and they only do like this, I enter. So it's a big animal, but they only put like the nose like this and enter. So really the possibility you can see one of those animals is really low. And then if they're scared, for example, because they hear the presence of the motor, they can stay until 20 minutes under the water without getting out. So probably many times we have passed over manatees and we don't see them just because they can stay there underwater for many, many minutes. So there are a lot of people working with manatees in Latin America, and I had been lucky enough to have been working with some of them. One thing that many groups are doing is capturing manatees to do health assessment and to take measurements of them. So we have here the people in Colombia, then the people from Belize, from Brazil, from Mexico, from Cuba, capturing manatees just to take information about these amazing animals. So we did a review of all those animals that have been captured, and in total we have 480 manatees captured just from the subspecies between the 70s and the 20s, the 2020. And then we tried to see what was the body condition of those animals. In all these areas we have captured manatees, and we have 71 in Colombia, which was very surprising. We have 11 in Brazil, and so on in the other countries. And then we tried to see what are the differences in the body condition of those animals, and we were very surprised to see differences with them, significantly difference in the body condition of those animals. And then we realized that the coastal ecotype, which is the blue manatees, are more robust than animals living exclusively in rivers. So remember that greater Caribbean manatees, even though they say in Brazil they are marine manatees, we have a big population living exclusively in freshwater, in the Orinoco River, in the Magdalena River, in the Usumacinta River, and other little rivers in South America and in Central America. And those animals are like Amazonian manatees. They never get out to the sea. And then we realized that those riverine animals are smaller than the others. But why? So we proposed these ecotypes of manatees on the Greater Caribbean manatees, that before was called Antillean manatees, where we have the riverine ecotype and the coastal ecotype. So what this has to do with the habitat use. So the coastal ecotype, they are moving depending on the fresh water. So what is driving the movements of the coastal ecotype is the presence or the absence of the fresh water. Manatees, they need to drink fresh water at least one time every week. Okay, they are not like dolphins that can go in the sea and stay in the sea waters. They need to be close to the fresh water. That's why even the coastal manatees or the marine manatees are always close to the coast, close to the sources of fresh water. So what happens is that when it's rainy, the animals can go up further in the sea, while when you don't have rains, they need to go under the river up, to be able to find the fresh water. So that's why this coastal ecotype is moving between the reef, the estuarium, and then the rivers. This is totally different what is happening in the freshwater ecotype. The freshwater ecotype, they always have fresh water. So they don't have any problem with the rains or no rains. They always have fresh water. But in this case, what is important is the lack of vegetation. So in this kind of rivers, like in the Amazon or the Orinoco or the Usumacinta, we have this change of levels of 10 meters between the flood when it's very low and high waters, and then the animals are going to move from the central of the river to the flooded areas. And this is the case of the Usumacinta, so you have several areas that are always flooded and several areas that get dry during the dry season. And the animals need to move between each other because, of course, they need water and they need vegetation. This is the case of the Orinoco River too, where manatees are moving also from areas that are flooded, and then in the dry season they need to go to the deeper areas of the river. So a few years ago we came up with this model of habitat use for manatees, and then we have like what is the resume that I already told you, that coastal population that is moving inside of the rivers depending on the presence or absence of the rains. We have the interior riverine population that is moving depending on the changes on the levels, and then we have an intermediate population that we don't know exactly how it works. Why? Because we didn't tag enough animals to really understand how those animals are moving. And after we saw something really interesting is that manatees that live between the reef and the rivers, they eat different things too. So when they are eaten in the reef, in the part of the reef or the part that is very marine, only salt water, they are eating seagrasses mainly. And these seagrasses are very, very nutritious for manatees. But they need fresh water. So they have like this decision, okay, I need to eat well, but there is no fresh water. No, and now I need fresh water, even if the food is not really good. So they are moving between the river and the coral reef, just having this trade-off between the fresh water and the nutritious of the plants they eat. So here there is a nice example of this. So we have those manatees moving from the reef, where they have seagrasses, Then the estuarium, they have several species, and then the river when they have other kind of vegetation. And then we have different species with different nutritional characteristics too. So what it has to do with conservation, this is something really interesting to see. So what is important to remember here is that all manatees are classified as endangered or as vulnerable. The Greater Caribbean manatees, which is the manatees we have here in Suriname and in the north part of South America, are endangered. The subspecies is endangered, even if the species is considered vulnerable. Why they are vulnerable or endangered? So I'm sorry if this is in Spanish, but I will translate. So there are several threats to manatees. The first one is the hunting or poaching, which historically was very, very intensive to the point that exterminated locally several populations of manatees. Right now, we have controlled the hunting in several areas of the distribution, but in other areas it has emerged again. For example, we have cases in Haiti, in Venezuela, in Nicaragua, where hunting has been emerged in the last year, especially after the pandemic. And here too, yeah. And we also have the problem that we don't have a good monitoring of the mortality in many areas. So maybe we have hunting, but we just don't know. No? So this is also a problem. Then we have the bycatch. During the fishing activities, we have this problem in many rivers of South America, like in Colombia, and it has been historically a problem for manatees, but currently it continues to be an important threat to manatee in many populations. In several areas, especially in coastal areas, we have boat collisions, especially with touristic boats, that go to very, very fast speed, especially in the Caribbean of Mexico, in Puerto Rico, and Belize. We have a big problem of boat collisions. Same than in Florida, but now we are seeing this more and more in our manatees too. We have a loss of habitat, that this is for all the species, and then we have problems of contamination, we have problems of the loss of seagrasses areas, we have the loss of mangroves that are areas for shelter for manatees. So this is like a transversal problem for all the populations. And then we have diseases that we continue to see every time we do health assessment. We find new diseases in manatees, but unfortunately it's not easy to do health assessment in manatees, so we don't really know what they have and what of these diseases could be important for them or even for the ecosystem or for ourselves as humans. So we have that the American manatee, the Trichechus manatus, is decreasing, and also the Antillean manatee or the Greater Caribbean manatee is decreasing in a global terms. This is what I don't know what I is doing here. We have a big problem in several areas in the rivers, and it's the sedimentation of the rivers that has to do a lot with loss of habitat. And this sedimentation is caused because several infrastructures like dams or things that are created in the rivers that are creating a lot of deposition of material in the rivers, producing sedimentation. And this sedimentation causes that the corridors that are used by manatees to pass from one river to another or one lagoon to another are closed, and then during the dry season the animals can be stranded and die or be hunted or be super vulnerable. So we have this problem in Colombia when we have massive strandings of manatees in the rivers during the different dry seasons, where people have to intervene to rescue the manatees and bring in to other areas. But in a lot of those cases, manatees, especially the young ones, can die because of the heat and because of they are hunted or they just don't survive in very shallow water. We have also a contamination problem that is also a problem of habitat loss. This was a case in Pantanos de Centla in Mexico a few years ago in 2018, where we have a mortality of almost 50 individuals of manatees that suddenly started to appear floating. And then when we did the exams and we did the test, what we found is a lot of bioaccumulation of toxins that are produced by algae. So normally this algae created a bloom of algae because of the lack of oxygenation. So this is also a problem together between sedimentation, contamination, dry season, etc., that produce this kind of situation that affects the plants and then the manatees that are feeding on those plants. As I told you, we have an increasing in boat collision and in several populations, like in Belize. This is what we are seeing in Belize. In 1 year, we counted more than 15 manatees die by boat collision in a year, which is a lot for a population that is growing so slowly. And in Mexico, we don't have this situation, but from 2020, we started to see more and more cases of manatee collision with boats. But we also think that we are recording more these situations because we have implemented more work with the people. So it could be also the situation that we have better communication with the local communities, so then we have more cases. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we have more mortality. So it's a little difficult to know if this increase is due to mortality increasing or to more information. We have in the Caribbean coast of Mexico a big touristic activity, and then we have beautiful water, super transparent, and then we have an actual offer to see manatees there. So this offer can be from the boat, or you can go to a program of swimming with the manatees, in snorkeling programs. So of course, these kind of activities have been grown without any control, without any protocols. So we are putting a lot of attention to see, or to try to help, or to try to work with the people working in tourism, to do this kind of activities in a way that is sustainable in the time and is not affecting the behavior or the health or the habitat use of those animals. This photo up is a photo in Tabasco, and they decided to give mangoes to manatees, and they have like a group of 20 manatees that are totally used to eat mangoes. And if you go as a tourist, you buy a bag of mangoes and you go to sit and to enter in the water to offer wild manatees mangoes. Of course, this implies a lot of problems, and it's the same government who is incentivizing this kind of activity. And it's very hard to manage because it's the local community who is creating this, and they are very happy, they love the manatees, I don't have any doubt about it. But the fact that you have little kids interacting with wild fauna in this way creates a lot of possibilities to transmit infections from one way or the other. Also, of course, we have a change of behavior by the manatees that impede them, for example, to move in the river depending on the season. They need to move to search for other areas during the dry season, but they stay there because they have mangoes. So why they are going to go somewhere else to find food? Where are my mangoes? So during the pandemic, where there were no mangoes, we have 2 animals that died because of hunger, because they didn't get food enough. So those are problems that we start to see that are emerging, that are not real like huge problems, but we are putting the eye on all of these problems. Invasive species. So in Colombia we have a case of invasive hippopotamus that were funny at the beginning, but it's not anymore because this population has grown without any control. This group of hippos were brought by Pablo Escobar in the 80s as a personal zoo. And then when the narco was killed, they let the hippos, they recovered the other animals. They have giraffe, they have a lot of other animals. But the hippos were a little difficult to manage, so they decided just to let it there. It was just 4 animals, 3 females, 1 male. And they just let the animals, and they say, okay, they're going to die. No problem, but the population started to grow up, and they started to reproduce. And right now we count with 200 hippos in all the Magdalena Basin. Yes, this was a paper that we published a few years ago with a model to try to estimate what happens if we don't do anything to control this population. So we are estimating that for 2050 we are going to have more than 1,000 hippos in the river. So you see, this is the map. You see in red, the dark red, the part where we have hippos right now, and in green, the potential areas of invasion. So it's really all the basin of the Magdalena, which is the most important river for Colombia. And then we try to see what is happening with manatees there. Manatees occupy the Magdalena River, and this hippopotamus population is overlapping completely the areas that are used by manatees too. So we're going to have a series of many different problems, especially in terms of the impact on the quality of the waters. The hippos are animals that are defecating, are urinating in the water. So, of course, this has a big impact on the characteristics of these waters. And also, those are violent animals, they are aggressive, and we don't really know what is going to happen with our manatees there, which are a small population, a very vulnerable population. So let's talk about something positive. So trying to deal with these kind of problems. I am a scientist. I like numbers. I like papers. I like these kind of things. But I am also convinced that we cannot conserve manatees or any other species if we don't work with the local community. So we started this project of the biocultural corridor for manatees, and this is a relatively new concept, the biocultural corridors, which is a kind of it's a conservation strategy to protect threatened wildlife and their habitat. And the main approach is to put the human people in the middle of the strategy, in the center of the process, as designers, as implementers, and as overseers of the monitoring and conservation actions for a species and its habitats. So we started this pilot in Quintana Roo, which is in the Caribbean of Mexico, which is all the coastal areas are very important for manatees, and it's also an area of the Mayan culture, indigenous culture that is still there. They still have the culture pretty much alive with the language and all. And we started in 2022 with this project. So we have 3 objectives, and the main idea is that education doesn't work in only one sense. It comes in 2 ways. So we teach them, but we also learn from them. So the first part is environmental education, which is the classic education that we go and we teach what we know to local people and awareness. But the second one is to listen to them, what they have to say to us. And of course, we learn pretty much more than what we are teaching. And the third part is the other step, which is citizen monitoring and surveillance. So after this, the first year, we reached more than 600 kids, preschool and school-age children and teenagers, and we did several workshops also with the adults. We are still doing interviews. We finished more than 200 interviews with fishermen, with tourist operators, and now we're working more with the tourist itself, because we want to know what is the local perception about manatees and also the local knowledge about manatees. And then we went to another phase, which was the citizen training workshops. So basically what we try to do is to train people to record manatees and to tell us where are the manatees, what they are doing, how many manatees they are, etc. So we have a first part that is theoretical, and we are more talking about biology, behavior, conservation. Then we go to the field with them, and we teach them several methods to collect manatee information and also the habitat information. We teach them how to use very simple equipment. We don't go with very expensive or technological things, something they can really have without no problem in the boat. And then we do also a standing workshop to teach them how to help an animal that is in distress, an orphan manatee, a sick manatee, or a dead manatee. We didn't plan this, but it happens. We started to create groups of WhatsApp to have a better communication with the people there, and then they started to send us videos and photos of manatees underwater because the water is very clear and they work in snorkeling and scuba diving. And then we started to get photos that were really good and allow us to photo identify manatees. And then themselves, they started to photo identify and name the manatees. And this was really nice stuff. So we started to organize all this in a catalog. And right now we have almost 100 manatees photo identified. And like I said, we have very nice photos that you can really see the notches in the tail. We can see this, for example, is a propeller wounds in a manatee. Here we have another manatee that probably received a hit of a boat. It's called Chueco. And then we have several manatees that are really identifiable. And we started to do then retro monitoring, going to the social networks to see what tourists and boat operators are putting in Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and we recover a lot of photos of manatees that allow us to enrich our catalog too. So we have manatees that were photographed in 2015, and we see this animal in this year. So it has been really, really exciting, and the most important of this, regardless the scientific importance of this kind of monitoring, is to see the people so excited and so involved and so feeling that every time one of them recognizes a manatee, I say to him, okay, you name it. Okay, I want to put her the name of my daughter. And then they get super attached with those animals, and I think this is the key for people really fall in love with the animals and really decide by themselves to protect them without you going to say to people, you cannot touch those manatees. This is our beautiful Pythagoras. He has a beautiful white triangle in the belly, as you can see, and he is super charismatic, and he loves pictures, so he comes to show you. It's a male. It's a juvenile. So this one, for example, is monitored by Valentina Kuchera, which is another person working with torrents, and she's just following this animal for many years. So those are totally wild animals. Those are not animals of rescued or anything. Those are animals that were born in the wild. It's just that we have the privilege to be able to take this kind of photos for the animals. We have several examples of what we can do with photo ID with manatees. We have Pancho. This manatee was informed by the network too, and this animal had a very strange behavior for an Antillean manatee, and he was in very strange places. And when I say strange behavior, I mean that he was too confident with humans. He was approaching too much. At the beginning we thought it was a rehabilitating manatees, but we don't have too many rehabilitators in the area, so it was very strange. And he has this scar that is typical from a boat collision, what we don't really have in Mexico. So it was very strange, and I started to ask to the Belizean colleagues and the Florida colleagues if they have in their catalogs these animals, and it turned out that it was an animal from Florida. It's a Florida manatee that crossed from Florida to Cancun, basically. We don't know where, how, or why he did this, but he was there, and it was very interesting, and it was only because we have this network of people just looking at manatees and tell us what they are seeing. This is another case. It was a globito. He was an animal that was having a problem of buoyancy. He was like floating too much. He was like a globo, like a balloon. That's why they call him globito. And the people was for weeks following those animals. He was in a very difficult area to reach. So finally, we went to try to capture the manatee. We couldn't find him. So I said to them, okay, you capture him. They already have participated in several captures. So the same people was able to capture the manatee for us. And after we could support the animal and try to give him the help he was needing. Thank you very much. This is the social networks of the corridor. So if you want to follow us, We appreciate it. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Are there questions? Yes, you can come here.
What role do manatees play for the ecosystem?
Yes, this is a good question. Yes, this is a good question. So manatees are mega herbivorous. It means that they are able to eat a lot of plants per day. So just for you to have an idea, one manatee can eat 10% of his body per day. So if a manatee weighs 500 kilos, how many kilos of grass? 10% of 500? Yay, 50. Very well. So they are able to eat a lot of seagrasses or a lot of plants, and by doing that, they are controlling the plant population. But also, they are like machines that are just passing this material, that is vegetation, passing to micro pieces that can be consumed by other animals. So they are recycling vegetation for other animals to be able to survive. So they really have a big impact in the trophic chain in the ecosystem, first of all. Secondly, they are beautiful. They are beautiful. So because they are beautiful, and it seems that it's funny to say that, but the fact that manatees are so charismatic are very important, because if we get to help manatees, we can help other animals that are not that charismatic. So we can get funds and we can get support for manatees to save other animals that maybe are not that cute for us as humans, right? So that's very important for conservation. Another question?
Thank you for the presentation. I learned a lot. It's very interesting. I had a question about the ecotypes. Is there any study done in Suriname about that? Do you think there are also the two ecotypes, the freshwater and the coastal one here? And are they separate population or do they mix? Do you know anything about that?
Very good question. And then we have another problem with the manatees here, because they are not easy animals. Manatees from the mouth of the Amazonian River, including Amapá, then French Guiana, Suriname, and Guyana, are probably all of them hybrids between Trichechus manatus manatus, which is the greater Caribbean manatee, and Amazonian manatees, the freshwater manatees. And we have enough information and enough samples to say that this is like a hybridization swamp of manatees. So that complicates the things a lot. but probably we are going to have manatees from the coast, but going into the rivers. In French Guiana, we have manatees from the river. The problem is that we don't really know how much those animals are moving between the coast and the river. Probably not that much, because the rivers don't go so far. I mean, to the places they can go. No? So for a manatee, I mean. For example, manatees in the Orinoco River, they are in the fresh water, and we know they are in fresh water because they are more than 1,000 kilometers from the sea, and there are areas that they cannot pass. So it's like animals from fresh water, no doubt. But those animals here, I wouldn't know. We don't know anything about manatees in this area, by the way. I mean, too much.
Yes.
I have a question. I don't know much about manatees. I've seen them. I've given them milk like that when I was little, and sometimes they come in the place we are in shore. And since I was little, and when the community was still little, the fishermen, when they find them, they always give them water. So if a manatee got lost, the fishermen would come and give water first thing. And this years ago, And now the New Year's, when a fisherman gives water, the rescue people will come and say, no, don't give water. You can't give water. So if you're far away and in the ocean, and if you see a manatee, do you give him water or do you not give water? Do you wait for somebody if you feel like, okay, this is far from the river?
Well, it depends on the situation. If you are talking about a calf, for example, that is orphan and appears just like that, normally the first thing you do with a calf is to hydrate the animal. Normally you use like other combination, not necessarily water, but I will give water to a calf that is orphan because normally probably he's not drinking milk for several days, and this is the most important thing to do is to hydrate the animal. If it's an adult animal that is just there, it's forbidden to give or water or food or anything else. Even if you believe, poor animal, he's in the sea, he needs fresh water. No, let him, because the water is like drugs for them. I mean, if you start to give with a host water to manatees, it's like the mangoes. They're going to stay there forever. So creating this how do you say? Dependency to manatees is terrible for them. So totally no. Yeah, it's very. I mean, I'm super curious about that too because it's not like you see them like a terrestrial mammal. You can see when they are drinking water, right? But a manatee, no. We have manatees drinking water from the freshwater sources that comes underwater, and they are just go there. But I suppose that fishermen are telling us there is always manatees here because there is fresh water coming out from the floor, and the manatees are there attract. So they start to join the dots and say, okay, freshwater manatees always. So in the end, they just learn that by experience, by observation. Whoa.
No more questions? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. What I don't know if you're aware, but what has always intrigued me is that I've heard that in the past in Georgetown, Guyana, they had these manatees in the canals in the city, and that they would keep like the canals clean of weeds, and always found it interesting how that came, and if that is something that, well, is that like keeping them in captivity, or is it something that could be useful, like living together with them in a way like that, and having maybe some education about them in that way, living so close to the humans. I just found it an interesting fact. I heard that at some point there was a drought and they rescued them and released them. And some of them still survive in this botanical garden. That's what I've heard. Maybe Monique has no, but I found it an interesting fact about that. Wanted to know your opinion.
Yeah, I'm being very careful because I seem to be giving off electricity here, so that's why I did that like that. But I think Natalie will say more about this. But also in Suriname, we did have manatees in canals because they were used to keep the canals clear. So it's something that was also done in Suriname. Yes, no, they were put there. Yeah, I have some horrific stories actually about manatees from Suriname, but I won't do that here.
Okay, so yes, this is a fashion in the 70s. So one came and say, okay, manatees are the best controllers of invasive plants, or yes, just plants, which they are. I mean, they can control, like I said. So they started just to take manatees from the wild to bring from one place to another to take care of the canals. I went 10 years ago to Guyana, and they still had one in the how do you call that? In the tank for the reserve of water of the city, you know, because it creates like algae. So they put a manatee just to clean, you know, like the water of the people. Where you put a manatee, why not? And they were capturing manatees in the in the areas of the cultures of cane, and they were capturing those animals, and after they put all of them in the botanical gardens in the Guyana, in Georgetown, and then we have now like 30 manatees there, because they reproduce between one with each other without any control. So we have this population there, ex situ, it means in captivity, for more than 100 years. So we don't know. I go in a couple of days to see what is the situation now. What I'm telling you, was like 10 years ago. I don't know what is happening now, but the idea is to try to do an agreement with them, to do a health assessment, a genetic assessment too, and try to propose a management plan for those animals, because definitely the well-being of those animals is not ideal at all. But we have this. We have in Panama, in the Panama Canal, we have also the reintroduction of several animals from Guyana. One Amazonian manatee, they pass to the Panama Canal. In Mexico, we have 10 manatees pass to another lake close to Mexico, DF, which is in the central of the country, super cold. They did a lot of crazy stuff at the time in the 70s, moving animals from one place to another. Yeah, people crazy. So yeah, this is true. It's so real, but it happens, and they are still there.
Yeah. Yes, Lana, you have a question.
What kind of food do they eat besides plants? And is there a difference between the food they eat in the river or sea?
A very good question too. So they basically eat plants. But because they are eating always in seagrasses and a big amount of plants, they can eat other things without intention. Like, for example, little crustaceans, little, like little invertebrates or small animals. Even fishes, sometimes they can eat. Depending on the area that they are, depending on the ecotype too, they can eat. If they are in the coast area, in the marine area, they mainly like to eat seagrasses. But if they are in the rivers, they eat a lot of things. They eat floating vegetation, they eat vegetation from the bottom, they eat even trees, flowers, a lot of things, fruits of several kinds of plants. So we have like 80 species of plants that are part of the diet of the manatees. So yeah, different part. There are several areas that the local fishermen claim that manatees eat fish. And they even hate manatees because they believe that manatees are competing for the fish. But we didn't prove this scientifically. But a lot of people, like 90% of people of certain locations, say manatees eat fish in this area. I know.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, there's one more question. You have to come here. Sorry. We want people online also to be able to hear what you're saying.
Yeah. No, this is that you say that the fishermen say they eat fish. Like human being, they're so superior. Like they eat one fish, and they're afraid of their whole fish population because you take away from human being. But so what you're saying, the fishermen say they eat fish, but you, with all the data, have never seen them eat fish.
So I don't like to just reject an idea of the fishermen. I mean, I always listen to them to see what they are saying that. I don't reject just like, no. In the books they say that manatees only eat this and it's only this. I always hear what they have to say because anyway they are the ones living with the animals there in the day by day. The thing is that we have done several studies about using feces of manatees to analyze microhistologically, and we never found scales or bones or something of fishes to say, okay, yeah. We have done isotopes analysis and a lot of things, and nothing of this have given us even a little clue about manatees eating fish. But they have shown us, like, look, this fish was eaten by manatees. One thing that happened is that manatees are very curious, and if you have a fish in a net, probably he comes to try to grab and to try to eat just by curiosity, but it doesn't mean that, for me, it doesn't mean that this is the main food or that they really like fish. But there are a lot of people that really, really swear manatees eat fish. Yeah, it's very strange. Okay.
Yeah, so sorry about that. If there are no more questions, then I would like to thank Natalie, and I hope we can come to some agreement that we can work together here in Suriname, because we need to breed some young people that are going to take over this research. Maybe I can say something, Thomas, to your question, because there has been one master student here who did some research on manatees, and the day that he defended his master's thesis, he says, in Suriname there has never been any manatees seen on the coast. But the day before that, I was with Christine Figener and people from Nature Conservation on the beach, and we saw 4 manatees swimming in front of the coast. So we still don't know all that much. And I've seen that animal again. So we need more research. The other river I was talking about, Marataka River, is very far from the sea. So the chances that those animals ever go all the way up to the estuary are very slight. So they may be always there. And one of the researchers, maybe something interesting to say as well, Natalie and I are both part of the wider Caribbean Manatee Alliance, as well as the South American Manatee Alliance. So there are 2 alliances, one working in South America, one in the wider Caribbean. And I have proposed that maybe we should meet all in Suriname, because we seem to be like in the intersection of both of these both alliances, because there's amazing research being done. We haven't even seen the slightest bit of all the research being done in this whole region, and we as Suriname can benefit, I think, from learning and spreading the word about manatee conservation, because the manatees are under threat in Suriname. So thank you again, and yes, and then I think we're going to close for today. Tomorrow we have another day of exciting sessions, or a half day, I have to say, so please join us again tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Okay, thank you.